Good day to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our Tropical Weather Outlook video for today, August 4th, Monday, 2025. Happy Monday to you. Happy beginning of another week. And to start off this brand new week, we have a lot to go over in the tropics. The Atlantic is starting to heat up, as I said it would, and now we have a new tropical storm today. What was Invest 95L yesterday off the east coast of the United States became Tropical Storm Dexter. Maximum sustained winds are 45 miles per hour with the minimum central pressure of 1,002 millibars. Sorry, I just had to turn off my phone for a minute. And if you're tracking it on a map, it's located at 35.2 north and 67.4 west, moving northeast at 14 miles per hour. And then we have two other areas of interest to watch. We obviously have the area that we need to watch here in the MDR, and I'll show you the models in just a bit. But there's also another area off the southeast coast as well that I've been hinting at, and the models have been hinting at for the last several days that might develop right after Dexter moves on out to the northeast. And this might actually be something we need to watch for the East Coast as well. So two other areas of interest, three total active areas right now of either already tropical development or potential tropical development. This is all part of, as I've been saying, the Atlantic beginning to heat up, and clearly we are seeing that come to fruition. And I've been warning you for the last several months, especially as we were going to head into the month of August, things were going to start to heat up. And obviously, we have that happening now. In the Eastern Pacific, though, things are still active right now. We have a new tropical depression which formed this morning, and this is also going to move out to sea. This is Tropical Depression 8, so no need to worry about impacts either to Hawaii or the Mexican and Central American coastline. Pretty much just like every other system we had in the Pacific right now. This is Tropical Depression 8E, maximum sustained winds at 35 miles per hour with a minimum central pressure of 1,006 millibars, located at 14.2 north and 119.9 west. That's if you're tracking it on the map, and then this is moving west-northwest at 15 miles per hour, and then we have another area back to the east here, which will be much closer to the Mexican coastline. And this will also probably go on to develop and become yet another storm here in the Eastern Pacific. So Eastern Pacific still chugging right now. Atlantic going to get to chug along too. The tropics are still active and are getting more active, especially in the Atlantic, as things progress. Here's a satellite picture of the Atlantic right now. And you can see Dexter off the East Coast here doing pretty decently, although it does have some shear to deal with, and I'll show you a zoomed in shot on Dexter in a little bit. Throughout the rest of the Atlantic, we have another interesting, I think this is a part of the tropical wave here, and that's still doing pretty nicely, but no exact signs that this will develop. But we will have to watch here because you still see that there's some sort of upper level energy that is over the southeast right now. This is going to move off the southeast coast, and this is going to be responsible for potentially something else trying to develop here off the southeast. And as I mentioned earlier, it might actually be something we need to watch for the southeast coast in terms of development. And then out in the MDR, nothing much right now, although we do have our area of interest, which is roughly right near the African coastline. It's kind of embedded within the ITCZ here in the southern tropical Atlantic. And then we're going to have to watch the MDR over the next week. So things definitely getting very active for sure. Here's a zoomed in shot of Dexter. And you can see a decent tropical storm right now. We have some nice convective bursts. So this is doing fairly healthily. Probably will strengthen a little bit because currently maximum sustained winds are at 45 miles per hour. I think the National Hurricane Center forecast is for this to get to 50. But obviously it's not the most organized system in the world. There is a little bit of shear associated with the storm. As obvious as you can see, a lot of these convective bursts are kind of very much disheveled, being forced off to the east here, and you could almost see the low-level center kind of exposed on satellite here on Dexter. So this is not going to become a very strong storm, and obviously this is going to stay well away from the East Coast. This is going to move off to the northeast. And here's the National Hurricane Center track just to prove that. Going to move off to the northeast, probably strengthen a little bit, and then die as we head into the end of the week. And then it'll eventually will go off into the northern Atlantic, and it'll probably just get absorbed by some sort of massive North Atlantic system of some sort. But this will stay well away from the East Coast, and we won't have to worry about direct impacts from it. But one thing I do want to mention, and I am going to mention with these storms a lot more, especially starting this hurricane season, the rip current risk, because in many ways, rip currents are an indirect impact of tropical cyclones, because the circulation from these storms produce swells which emanate outward and eventually strike the East Coast. And that causes rip currents, and rip currents can, and they often do, take lives. And so, it's kind of a direct impact caused by the storm. And as you can see, we have a high risk of rip currents along the outer banks of the Carolinas, stretching all the way up to the New Jersey coastline, where we have a moderate risk for rip currents, and we even have a high risk as well here in the Gulf, although I don't think that's really associated with Dexter. But I'm pretty sure, especially this area here off the East Coast along the outer banks of the Carolinas, where there is a high risk for rip currents currently in effect, definitely being caused by the swells that Dexter is probably producing. And please keep that in mind if you're going to the beach. I know probably a lot of people are going to the beach this upcoming week. It's going to be a nice week, especially if you are along the East Coast, and it's definitely a nice day right now here where I am in New York City and throughout the Northeast. So obviously there will be a lot of people at the beach. Please keep in mind the rip current risk because it is an impact, and it is something that you need to take seriously and take precautions of. Obviously not like it's a landfalling system, but once again, keep in mind of rip currents because they are an impact, especially if you are heading to the beach. So I did want to point that out with Dexter, and we're probably going to get even more of these rip current events here, especially as we start getting more activity in the Atlantic very soon, and that's definitely going to cause a lot of swells and very high waves throughout the Atlantic, which will probably result in more rip currents along the East Coast. Here's a vorticity picture of the Atlantic right now, just to give you a sense of how things are shaping, especially with Dexter here. And you can see has a very nice pronounced vorticity signature, so definitely has a solid low-level center. Obviously one of the most important things when it comes to, defining a tropical cyclone. So there's that. There's also lots of energy out here in the eastern Atlantic, and once again, we're going to have to watch this over the next week as it looks like something will try to come out of the MDR here. And there's a lot of uncertainty about what exactly is going to happen, although a lot of the models right now are leaning towards something that just tries to consolidate in the MDR and then gets sent out to sea in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. But still, all of this is going to happen over a week time frame, and we're going to have to watch very closely what happens here. And then obviously, as I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of vorticity associated with energy over the deep south, and this is probably going to contribute to whatever other development that we have here off the southeast coast. And you can also kind of see the makings of the frontal system that was moving off the East Coast, which also gave birth to Dexter and allowed Dexter to form, which is why we have it now. And once again, we're probably going to have to watch this same general system of energy with this front here, as well as some other energy here off the deep south. And that's going to lead to more development probably off the East Coast sometime later this week. Moving into the Eastern Pacific really quickly, though, because obviously there is still activity in the Eastern Pacific, and the Pacific is probably going to remain somewhat active for at least the next week or so. We obviously have Tropical Depression 8 out here, or 8E, since it's the Eastern Pacific. That's going to move on to the west-northwest, and I'll actually show you the track of the storm really quickly. I'm going to move off to the west-northwest. Obviously will not bring any impacts to the Mexican coastline, although, as I mentioned, with swells and rip currents, that'll probably also be an issue for the Mexican coastline as well. And will probably continue to be an issue for the next few days because we're going to get more development here in the Eastern Pacific, but at least with Tropical Depression 8E, definitely going to become another named storm. So another storm that the Eastern Pacific can add to its list of storms that happened so far this year, or another name they could cross off the list, but probably will not become much stronger than that. So we won't have to really worry much about 8E. And then obviously we're going to have to watch back here near Central America. Obviously we have a lot of energy right now near Central America, probably some tropical waves in here that move through the Caribbean and are now moving into the Eastern Pacific. And obviously there's going to be more development that occurs here in the Pacific off the Mexican coastline. So Pacific still remaining active and the Atlantic becoming more active over the next several days. And in fact, I'll show you a picture right now of how Africa looks like, just to get, because, you know, all of our tropical waves, one of the main sources of development here in the Atlantic, they come from Africa. And as you can see right now, Africa is definitely busy. We have a wave right now over portions, probably, I think, over Ghana. And we have another wave here over Central Africa, and probably another wave that's trying to get going here over Eritrea and Ethiopia here in Eastern Africa. And all of these waves are going to chug along to the west until eventually they get into the Atlantic. And especially now that we're going to have more favorable conditions move on into the Atlantic, a lot of these waves are going to have a much easier time, and they're going to be trying much harder to develop in the Atlantic. And things are going to start getting much more active here over the next several weeks. And in fact, it's already happening as I've been showing you. And just another kind of testament to things becoming more favorable in the Atlantic. Take a look at the shear map. And I haven't actually showed the shear map in a while, probably because it was very unfavorable for a while. But notice here, especially throughout the Atlantic, the Eastern Atlantic especially, starting to see a lot of these greens pop up, especially if you remember from probably the last time I showed the shear map. The entire tropical Atlantic, in fact, most of the Atlantic as a whole, had all of these reds, meaning much higher shear. Things were very unfavorable, but now, as we're heading into August, things are starting to get more favorable. Starting to see a lot of these greens pop up here in the Eastern Atlantic, even seeing a lot more of lower shear values as well throughout the Caribbean, and even into the Western Atlantic too. Although you can see where Dexter is, there's definitely some higher shear right now. So Dexter battling shear, and because of that, once again, it probably won't become a strong storm. But overall in the Atlantic, things are definitely slowly becoming more favorable. And as a result, we're going to have a lot of activity here to watch in the next coming weeks. And one of the best ways to show that is the European ensembles. Just look at how much activity showing up within the span of the next 10 days here on the European ensemble. First, we have Dexter. That'll move, of course, off on into the northeastern Atlantic. I was about to say the Pacific Northwest, but obviously this is a picture of the Atlantic. But we have Dexter here. Then we have another area here off the East Coast. And very interestingly enough, there are actually quite a few pretty aggressive ensemble members here off the East Coast. So that will definitely be something we need to watch. Obviously, there's a very aggressive signal for our tropical wave, although seemingly today a lot of the ensemble members are starting to agree that this will probably be more something that stays out to sea, which is obviously a good thing, will not impact any major land areas. And obviously we can hope for that. But notice, especially as we get towards the very end of the run, notice what starts to happen here. Yet another wave right behind whatever happens in the MDR right now. And this is just going to continue to happen. This is a sign, especially as we get, and this is as we are getting further, deeper and deeper into August, you really start to see the train of storms begin to light up here in the Atlantic. And so just by this run alone, I can tell you we have one, probably another area here, and then we have another thing here. And even a few ensembles make it into the Gulf, but that's, I think, associated with the thing in the southeast. So I thought it was, for a moment, something else, but I guess it's associated with this area off the southeast. So roughly already on this map alone, 3 things probably occurring in the Atlantic over the next week. And then beyond that, you can start to see more ensembles. Only more and more ensembles begin to show up here in the MDR. So things are gonna ramp up, and They're only going to get more active from here on out. And finally, before I end off, the GFS model, because obviously we looked at the ensembles. Here's the operational GFS. We have Dexter, which is obviously here off the East Coast. Definitely strengthens a little bit, but then remains off the East Coast and then eventually moves on off into the Northwest and gets reabsorbed and kind of merges with whatever frontal energy we have left here in the Northern Atlantic. And then obviously this is roughly 4 to 5 days out. We have something that tries to develop here off the southeast coast. You could see some sort of low pressure that tries to consolidate really quickly and almost kind of does so as it moves off the southeast coast. So that's associated with the area of interest we have there. And then eventually, you notice here in the MDR, a very aggressive wave that moves out. And the GFS, at least on the 12Z run, at least out to the next week or so, not very aggressive on the wave in the MDR. Certainly not as aggressive as maybe the Euro is, but the signals are there, and especially when it comes to whatever we are tracking in the MDR right now, most of these signals are within the 5 to 7, even beyond 7-day time frame. So there's really not much you could say right now specifically as to whatever happens in the Eastern Atlantic, other than we need to watch and we need to keep our eyes very closely on the tropics here over the next week, because things are once again going to start getting more active. In fact, we can even see something else here on the GFS in the Gulf of Mexico as we head into early next week, trying to consolidate. And then maybe if I go out a little bit further here, into the don't take seriously territory, looks like eventually the GFS does try to consolidate whatever wave that we have here in the Eastern Atlantic. Eventually does seem like it wants to consolidate a little bit further west. So bottom line, we just got to watch the tropics. We just got to watch and see how things progress over the next several weeks, because it's going to start getting active, and a lot of things are going to happen, as I've been saying they would for the past several weeks, especially as we are progressing into early August. And then really quickly, looking at the Eastern Pacific, we definitely have a lot of activity that occurs there, although the GFS model not really entirely loaded for the Pacific yet, but we have Tropical Depression 8E that develops and probably becomes, oh no, that's actually Gil, never mind. But we have Tropical Depression 8E, and then we have something else here that tries to develop, although I probably shouldn't show that anyways because the model's not really loaded. But trust me, there's other stuff happening in the Eastern Pacific. So the tropics all around starting to get busy. Was the Eastern Pacific for a while, but now, as I've said, that the MJO is going to move into the Atlantic. Now we are starting to see the effects of the MJO work their magic in the Atlantic as well. And now that we're in August, it's only going to ramp up from here further, all the way till September, when we will probably reach the peak of this hurricane season. So buckle up and enjoy the ride, because it's going to get bumpy from here on out. With that being said, that's going to do for today's video, though. If you like what you saw today, please like this video, comment your thoughts, and any questions you have below. I'll try to answer them as quick as possible. And subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. I post these videos every single day, and I'll definitely be posting them every single day for the next few weeks here, as things will really start to ramp up in the Atlantic. So please make sure to stay tuned for that. Have a great rest of your day. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. And as always, I'll be back with more tomorrow.